Listen up. The real Brad Lee is dropping.
Our thing was, if we can make the product actually metabolically advantageous and people eat it, and that gives us a chance to be more valuable to them over time, then we've really got something.
Wasn't there a lot of competition though? I mean, what makes a Quest? When I think of Quest, I don't think of Quest Nutrition. I think of the Quest bar, and they were good, but like there were a million other bars right next to it. And like that had to have, was that happening while you were coming up?
So this is what Peter Thiel calls a 0 to 1 moment. In business, you always want to be in a position where you're going from 0 to 1. And for us, the 0 to 1 moment, because there were 1,600 other, between all the different flavors and companies on the shelves, you're going up against 1,600 other bars in a segment that's been declining. So I think it had been declining for at least 2 years by the time we came in, but no one had ever made a bar that tasted like it had sugar, but didn't. There were people that had a bar that tasted like it had sugar because it did. And there were people that didn't have sugar, but it tasted like cardboard. So we thought, well, this is a 0 to 1 moment. If we can make a bar that actually tastes like it has sugar, but doesn't. And so that's what we created. It ended up being far harder to manufacture that than we thought, which of course is why nobody else had done it before us. But in having that 0 to 1 moment, we just had an awareness problem. And once you made people aware that that problem had now been solved, then it exploded.
And so after you sold the company, that was only 8 months ago when you're out, correct?
Well, I left on a day-to-day level, but in terms of financially out was 8 months ago. So you can think of me as being gone for almost 4 years.
Yeah. So but right now, if everybody, went out and bought a bunch of Quest bars, it doesn't affect you one bit.
It does not affect me one bit anymore, other than it's still cool to see your child thriving.
Sure.
So, even though somebody else is now raising my child, it is still neat to see it do so well and them continue to release products and innovate. So I cheer belovedly from the sidelines at this point.
Not that you would say anything bad about the company that bought it, but a lot of times I notice when passionate founders raise a brand to that level of success and then pass it on, depending on who they pass it on to, which could be a corporate company, just a venture, capital fund or something. I notice that a lot of the times the quality starts to deteriorate. Are you fearful of that at all?
That's really going to be the thing they will have to pay attention to. So some ungodly amount of acquisitions fail for the reason that you're talking about. Now, the good news is for the end customer and for companies is your motivations actually don't matter. Only your actions matter. So if you have great intentions but end up ripping off your customer, that's bad news. If you have terrible intentions but you end up helping customers thrive, then who cares, right? The customer just cares if they thrive. So my hope is that, they take the reason for the founding and continue to focus on metabolic health. If they do that and they're making products that people love to eat, then they'll be just fine. And they've thrived as a company for decades prior to purchasing us. So they're obviously doing many things right. So I'm certainly optimistic, cautiously so. I think that you do have to be very, very careful to make sure that your behaviors are in line with what the customers want. If they execute, that's really all that matters.
So now you wake up, you got a ton of dough, actual liquidity. Because when you were describing what you said, people think you're rich. I say this all the time. It's like everybody assumes I've got like millions and millions of liquid dollars. And it's like my company does millions of dollars, but until I sell it, it's really like I'm exactly where you were. Now, I keep thinking about the day I look at that app and refresh and I see the cash. I already like myself. So I'd be just flat out excited because you can finally now go live life a little bit and start helping other people. When you woke up that day, is that why you started Impact Theory or was that before even?
That was before. So we sold Quest sort of in two moves. So first we took a sort of founder liquidity small investment. It was small in percentage, but obviously the valuation was just massive in terms of dollars. But then I was still at the company. And then I exited, 2 or 3 years after that on a day-to-day basis. And so then had the massive amount of my equity still tied up in the company. And then, like I said, roughly 8 months ago, we did a final sale where we all exited the company permanently. And so it was sort of the bigger one, honestly, was the first time, because that's where I went from sort of normal income to now I'm truly wealthy. Whereas the second time it was from sort of wealthy to more wealthy. So it wasn't as like jarring and sort of life changing. But to me, it's impact theory is all about when I was 18, I started big brothering for this kid, extraordinary kid, loved him, and was just like, whoa, his zip code is really fucking with his entire life. And I thought it planted a seed. At the time, I was too young and stupid to really think anything quite too intelligent. I just wanted him to know somebody loved him, because he came from a very troubled home. And then flash forward 15 years later, and I've got 1,000 employees that remind me of this kid. And they're growing up in crazy circumstances. Like one guy held his stepfather while he bled to death from a gunshot wound to the head. Another kid saw his sister shot to death in the heart with an AK-47 in his front yard. Another kid hid under a car while his best friend tried to hold his intestines in and bled to death like 8 inches from his face. I mean, it's just like story after story like that. So crazy. And I was like, why don't they get out of this situation? Like, this is crazy. And some of them were objectively more intelligent than I am, meaning they can process raw data more quickly than I can, but they weren't going to do anything with their lives because they didn't have, like, if you think of intelligence as the hardware, they didn't have the operating system, the software to make sense of the world, to operate in a way that would allow them to leverage their intelligence. And so I just got really hardcore about, there's got to be a way to teach this, because I didn't start with business instincts, and yet I've built very successful companies. So how do I pass this on? And I found that about 2% of them actually took the information, because I said, look, I will teach you everything I know about business. I will make myself available. I will come in early. I will stay late. We created something called Quest University. Like, I will be way diehard to give you this information. And 2% of them, it changed their lives and their families' lives forever. 98%, on the other hand, did fuck all with the information. And I was just like, this is crazy. So I was very frustrated with this 98% drop off. And I was very willing to accept I was the problem, that I just didn't know how to do this. And I started looking at, how do you change the mindset of somebody who's antagonistic to change? Because, dude, some of the 2% ended up getting in fist fights with people back home because they were like, you've changed, you've sold out. And I was like, this is bananas. So it just brought me back around to where I started, which is actually filmmaking, which is what I leveraged in marketing to help grow Quest. And coming back to the sense, if I could change their self-narrative, if I could change their value system and their beliefs with stories by hitting them on an emotional level, and it's my first passion, my first skill set anyway, could I really do something? And so when I left Quest, I think my last day was a Monday or a Tuesday, and the very next day we started Impact Theory. So it wasn't like I exited and wanted to take time off. Like, I understand meaning and purpose are the primary drivers in anybody's life. No matter how much money you have, meaning and purpose will be the thing that wake you up. And so we started it the next day with the goal of building the next Disney, meaning literal film and TV storytelling, so that we could change over generations sort of what the cultural subconscious celebrates. And if we could get people to celebrate a growth mindset, working hard, being tenacious, personal responsibility, things that have become sort of passé, which I'm utterly shocked by, then we could have real impact. And so that's why it's called Impact Theory, because it is quite literally my theory on how to impact people at scale.
Dropping knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it.
I like the Impact Theory one because it's a nice ending, but that one you almost always get some wild answer, or at least half the time. It has nothing to do with the show. And then there's not enough time to, you're such a great thread puller. Like of interview, because you spend so much time researching people, it is obvious. And people always come on, it's like, how did you know that about me? Well, because Tom's doing the work to dive into your entire life story. He knows it. And then you follow your curiosity, and you're such a good thread puller that then I want to know why the keto guy says relationships is the most important thing to fix your health. And it's only, like a minute and a half answer.
Yeah.
Have you thought about switching that?
I haven't, partly because it is interesting sort of in isolation, because if I brought it in too early, then I think a lot of the interviews would take on a more philosophical tone, because people are trying to either give you something that's in their wheelhouse. So the sleep guy will tell you that it's sleep. The hydration person's going to tell you that it's water. But you do every now and then get these really random answers that I actually wouldn't want to get earlier, because then to pull that thread, to follow up on it, to not make it completely a non sequitur, which works at the end, but wouldn't work earlier in the episode. There's a lot of pressure on people with that question. And so I find that it can go in these very interesting directions, which is fun as a point on the end of it. Yeah. But wouldn't take the interview where I want to go. So I often don't know what they're going to say. And if you want to know a little bit about my interview style, I once heard that a DA is never going to ask you a question to which he does not already know the answer. And I thought, that's an interesting tactic. So in my interviews, I'll say 80% of the questions I'm asking because I know where you're going to go. And I think that it's going to add a lot of value to people. So I'm steering them towards that. I'm pulling threads because, one, I am following my curiosity, but two, oftentimes I know they've got some deep wisdom down that thread and I just need to get them there. And if I were asking that question, which I usually don't know the answer because I don't know if they're going to be philosophical, I don't know if they're going to be obvious, it's better as a punctuation.
So I think the reason that the pursuit of wealth ends up leaving people in this really dark place is because they think it will make them feel better about themselves. They admire people with money. They think they will admire themselves when they become wealthy, and you won't. What you will admire, though, is the hard ass work that you put in to get good. That really will change you. But that's completely independent of the money. So what the money does, the reason people will chase money until the end of time, is because it has real utility. It lets you build things. And that's extraordinary, and it's very exciting. And so if you know what you want to build, and what you want to build is both exciting and honorable, then money's way powerful. If you got money to be better than somebody else, it won't work. Because if you feel like an asshole before you get the money, you're still going to feel like an asshole after you get it. And then if you lean into thinking that money makes me better than people, and so I get to lord it over them, then there's this real weird disconnect between, if I'm better than them, why do I still feel like an asshole? So it's like, it really sketches people out. So the good news is I had my economic crisis thinking money would make me feel better about myself like 8 years before I actually got wealthy. So I had stopped chasing money, and that was ironically what allowed me to build a business that really was just life-changing. But because I realized the pursuit of money will not make me feel good about myself. So let me try to build something that's valuable to myself and to other people. And that just changed everything.
Is that impact theory?
No, that was Quest. So impact theory is that times 10, but Quest was, I went in, we had a technology company before that, and I went in and quit. I gave my equity back, which was worth about $2 million. And I said, look, I'm not going to cross the finish line, so I don't want anything for this. Take it. And I just need to go do something that makes me feel alive. Yeah, and then it made my partners realize that they weren't happy either. And so we decided to ultimately move out of that. And I'm obviously condensing a very long story, to move out of the technology company and start something that would be predicated on passion and value creation and community and like all this different stuff. Because we were tired of chasing money. We wanted to believe in something. And because we were doing it because we wanted to believe and we wanted to help and we wanted to create value, we created Quest. And we actually said out loud when we founded the company that we will not make decisions based on what's more profitable. We'll make decisions based on what adds more value to the customer. And from that arose, this $1 billion company, and it was crazy, but we actually lived by that principle. It was pretty neat to see that doing that in the age of social media, being a good person is the most powerful marketing vehicle that there is. Now, you still have to be good at business, which is where a lot of people fail. They think that being a good person and wanting good things is enough. You have to also know business. But if you know business and care about value and really want to do something rad for your customers, it's pretty powerful.
Love it. And now, top 10 business podcast on planet Earth.
Boom.
So you know what I'm saying. So a lot of people listen to me, doctors, lawyers, blue-collar workers, construction workers, a lot of MLM folks, realtors, salespeople, and it's growing.